Hey there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, I'm the newsman Sam Sachs, and it's the Friday show. So time to cut loose. Foot loose. Kick off the Sunday shoes. Please. Louise. The National Transportation Safety Board said it will have a report out within 30 days on the cause of the air collision above Washington National Airport, the deadliest crash in the U.S. in decades. But early findings are already leaking out to the press. Multiple outlets reported that the staffing at the control tower at the airport was, quote, not normal, and that the air traffic controller in charge of communicating with helicopters was also forced to direct airplanes. That's a job for two people normally. But as the New York Times reported, quote, like most of the country's air traffic control facilities, the tower at Reagan Airport has been understaffed for years. The tower there was nearly a third below targeted staff levels, with 19 fully certified controllers as of September 2023. The shortage, caused by years of employee turnover and tight budgets, among other factors, has forced many controllers to work up to 6 days a week and 10 hours a day. Well, that does sound like a problem that is not solved by putting in place a hiring freeze and offering buyouts to all government workers, including flight controllers, encouraging them to quit. Both things that Trump did already. So instead, the president blamed DEI.
And I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so.
And yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed. And you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control and seemingly the member of the U.S. military who was flying that Black Hawk helicopter. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all.
That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't.
Not only did Trump blame DEI, but one by one, his lackeys did too. The vice president, the defense secretary, and the transportation secretary. He said on yesterday's show that Trump and his allies would at least wait until they knew the race and gender of the pilots before blaming DEI. I was wrong. They did it immediately. Never underestimate their depravity. After the comments, Trump convened a sham executive order signing in the Oval Office, again, purportedly to root out DEI that has made the U.S. aviation system unsafe.
Second, for your signature, we have a presidential memorandum titled Immediate Assessment of Aviation Safety. In light of the damage done to aviation safety by the Biden administration's DEI and woke policies, what this presidential memorandum orders is for your Secretary of Transportation and FAA Administrator, in this case acting FAA Administrator, to basically ensure that we are actively undoing all of that damage, that we are assessing how much damage was done, and that we're ensuring that people hired within the FAA, in keeping with your memorandum of January 21st, are only the most outstanding, capable people for the jobs that they're being hired into.
In other words, competence.
Yes, sir. Elevating competence over everything else instead of the DEI policies that were pursued by the Biden administration.
If anyone is keeping track, DEI is now to blame for historic wildfires in California and for an Army helicopter ramming into a passenger jet. While we're at it, what the fuck is the Army doing running nighttime training missions in the same airspace as one of the most complex and busy airports in the country? I don't care how long this has been going on and what protocols are in place to avoid accidents, because they obviously didn't work. And there's been warning signs, previous near collisions between passenger jets and military helicopters at the same airport over the last few years. If I was Defense Secretary and I was aware of these training flights and how often there have been close calls in the past, I would have put a stop to it in my first week on the job. Mr. President, the country is mourning and demands a sacrifice. You must fire Pete Hegseth. The White House itself is waging class war against public workers on behalf of billionaires who want tax cuts and deregulation. With the help of Elon Musk and other class allies in his administration, Trump is trying to cut labor costs in order to pay for his giveaways to the rich, also his mass deportation program. First, it's the ideological attacks on civil servants, placing workers on leave, firing, or threatening to fire them simply because they work in agencies deemed to be too woke or whatever. Also encouraging workers to snitch on each other for doing secret DEI. Trump has also moved to change the status of thousands of government workers to make it easier to fire them. The plan, known as Schedule F, would reclassify their jobs as at-will positions, paving the way for Trump to install tens of thousands of chuds across the federal bureaucracy, or just leave the positions empty and let services degrade. And now, according to Wired, Elon Musk's influence has stretched beyond the so-called Department of Government Efficiency. He's managed to get several of his lackeys now installed in high positions at the Office of Personnel Management, which oversees the entire federal government's workforce and can do a lot of damage to it. These lackeys include a former employee of Musk's at XAI, who's now chief of staff at OPM, Amanda Scales. Other senior ranks have been filled by an engineer at Tesla in the Boring Company, also a 21-year-old who previously worked at Palantir, and a kid who just graduated high school last year and did a summer job at Musk's brain chip company, Neuralink. Elon Musk's fingerprints are all over the operations at OPM, particularly that memo that went out to almost the entire federal workforce this week, offering them a buyout if they agree to quit. The memo was unsigned. It just instructed people to send an email to a certain address with the word resign in the subject, and they'd be enrolled in a deferred resignation program, where they'd still allegedly receive pay and benefits through the end of September, which is the end of the fiscal year, basically. The memo was titled "Fork in the Road," a phrase Musk recycled from his own recent employee purge. This is from the American Prospect, quote, "This was an Elon Musk operation through and through. In fact, the Fork in the Road email had the same title as the one that Elon Musk sent to Twitter when he took over there, informing workers to be extremely hardcore or take the resignation offer. The Twitter emails even included the same ask of workers to reply with their decision." As we all know, Musk went on to destroy 80% of Twitter's value, but he did turn it into a Nazi political machine that helped get Donald Trump's message out, which is the same plan for the federal workforce now. It's questionable whether OPM can even do this, and if it can make such an offer. If it turns out it can't, then workers who accept this deferred resignation might not get the full pay they were promised. That's why public worker unions are advising their members to turn down the offer. But the Fork in the Road memo was also intended to freak workers out, even the ones that have no intention of resigning. Like this part that reads, quote, "If you choose to remain in your current position, we thank you for your renewed focus on serving the American people to the best of your abilities and look forward to working together as part of an improved federal workforce. At this time, we cannot give you full assurance regarding the certainty of your position or agency. So basically, take this offer now because you might get fired later and not get as good of an offer. The American Federation of Government Employees, which has 800,000 members, blasted the memo, said in a statement, quote, "Purging the federal government of dedicated career civil servants will have vast, unintended consequences that will cause chaos for the Americans who depend on a functioning federal government. This offer should not be viewed as voluntary. Between the flurry of anti-worker executive orders and policies, it is clear that the Trump administration's goal is to turn the federal government into a toxic environment where workers cannot stay, even if they want to." The White House has taken an expansive view of presidential powers, arguing Trump can fire whoever the hell he wants in the entire 3 million person bureaucracy, no matter the laws passed by Congress to stop him. He did it at the Justice Department, he did it at the NLRB, and he also fired 12.5 inspectors general across the federal government. You know, each day we're striving for a workers' government, but we're drifting closer and closer to a government without any workers at all. Some of President Trump's most controversial nominees faced confirmation hearings on Thursday. It was day 2 of RFK Jr. taking questions from senators. And at the same time, both Tulsi Gabbard, who is Trump's nominee to be the Director of National Intelligence, and Kash Patel, Trump's FBI nominee, were on the hot seats in their respective confirmation committees. My guess is that Republicans scheduled all these at the same time by design, put all the hearings up so they all just drown each other out. It's the same flood the zone strategy Trump is known for. And I gotta say, it worked. I didn't watch any of them. All right, I did watch a little bit of the Kash Patel hearing, but I did have to turn it off after listening to Democratic senators on the committee absolutely struggle, to nail a guy who has an extensive record associating with right-wing cranks, promising to target political enemies and journalists, and endorsing QAnon. It's just a bit too frustrating. I did, however, check out a hearing this week that got less attention. It was convened by Senator Ted Cruz in the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, and the purpose of it was to manufacture consent for war. Cruz used the hearing to bolster President Trump's claims that the Chinese had taken over the Panama Canal and that the U.S. needed to take it back. Although the case put forward during the hearing was extremely weak. For example, here was Cruz trying to get Luis Sola, the chairman of the Federal Maritime Commission, to explain why Americans should be concerned that China is building a bridge over the Panama Canal.
Why should Chinese construction of a bridge near Panama City concern the United States?
Mr. Chairman, we all saw the tragedy that happened here in the Francis Scott Key Bridge incident and the devastation that had happened to Baltimore. We also saw recently what happened in the Suez Canal, where we had a ship get stuck in there. It's not only the construction of the bridge, but it's a removal of a bridge, as I understand it, called the Bridge of the Americas. It was built in 1961, and that would paralyze cargo traffic in and out of the canal.
That doesn't make any sense at all. To me, it sounds like the Chinese are replacing a 60-year-old bridge over the canal, something that would prevent a catastrophic bridge collapse like we saw in Baltimore. So, why is this a bad thing? Gotta say, I'm not too concerned about China building a bridge over the Panama Canal. Are you? It is true that a Chinese company does hold the contract to administer 2 ports, one on each side of the canal, but the company Hutchison Ports operates infrastructure all around the dang world. So if you're concerned about Chinese influence and spies in Panama, you've got an even bigger problem. This is testimony from Daniel Maffei, a commissioner on the FMC.
Senator Sullivan was talking about Hutchison Ports. That's actually the same company that runs terminals on both ends of the canal. I am concerned about that. However, if we want to be concerned about that, all of us should lose a lot more sleep than we're losing. Because if there's spies there, then there might be spies at other Hutchison ports. And there are other Hutchison ports in almost every part of the world. They own the largest container port in the United Kingdom, Felixstowe, which is responsible for nearly half of Britain's container trade. They control major maritime terminals in Argentina, Australia, the Bahamas, Germany, Indonesia, Mexico, Myanmar, the Netherlands, South Korea, and Tanzania. If owning and managing adjacent ports means that China somehow has operational control or strategic control over the Panama Canal, they also have it over the Suez, the Singapore Straits, the Mediterranean Sea, and the English Channel.
Fair enough. If Ted Cruz and other senators are mad about China using infrastructure projects to curry favor with governments around the world, like Panama, well, then maybe they should recommend the U.S. do the same thing, instead of dropping bombs all around the world, or as the case right now, freezing foreign aid all around the world. Later in the hearing, the president's main talking point about China and the canal collapsed under questioning from Congressman Andy Kim. Here's Chairman Sola again, this time trying to balance reality with not getting fired by Trump. Honestly, it was all pretty funny to watch.
So Chairman Sola, President Trump said, quote, China is operating the Panama Canal. We didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. I guess I just wanted your assessment there. Is China operating the Panama Canal?
Senator Kim, I never discredit anything that President Trump says. He has a different briefing book than I do. Mm-hmm. What I can say is that the Panama Canal is operated, as far as I know, by the ACP, the Panama Canal Authority, mm-hmm. and they're very efficient at operating the canal on the throughput that they're able to do.
So you're saying, from your knowledge, you don't know of reasoning to believe that China is operating the Panama Canal, from the knowledge that you have?
From the knowledge that I have on whether the... Senator, what we have here is...
My man is struggling there. He knows China doesn't control the Panama Canal, but he also knows if he admits to that, he's going to get fired. Tough job. Tough job. Throughout the hearing, Republicans were trying to make the case for how Panama is in violation of its treaty with the U.S. over the canal. They failed to do so. But they did get one of the witnesses to claim that if Panama does violate the treaty, the U.S. has the authority to use military force. Here's Cruz questioning George Mason University law professor Eugene Kantorovich.
If the United States determines that Panama is in violation of the treaty, what is the range of remedies the United States would have for that treaty violation?
So I think it may be shocking to people to hear today, but when one goes over the ratification history and the debates and discussions in this body over this treaty, it was clear that the treaty was understood as giving both sides separately the right to resort to use armed force to enforce the provisions of the treaty.
Armed force. You're right, I am shocked to hear that. But that's because I actually took the time to read the Panama Canal Treaty, especially the section on how to settle disputes, and it doesn't mention anything about armed force. Instead, it reads, quote, in the event that any question should arise between the parties concerning the interpretation of this treaty or related agreements, they shall make every effort to resolve the matter through consultation in the appropriate committees established pursuant to this treaty and related agreements, or, if appropriate, through diplomatic channels. In the event the parties are unable to resolve a particular matter through such means, they may, in appropriate cases, agree to submit the matter to conciliation, mediation, arbitration, or such other procedure for the peaceful peaceful settlement of the dispute as they may mutually deem appropriate. Again, peaceful settlement. Peaceful. Nothing about armed force there. It's really not good how serious Republicans appear to be about this. Pray for Panama if you do that sort of stuff. I'm here, reporting for duty, ready to name and shame a rich dick. We opened up the nominations again this week and got some pretty good suggestions. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy was nominated. He spent his first days in office taking an axe to DEI programs and clean energy initiatives, which I guess are also woke. Then there was a major air disaster in D.C., and Duffy blamed it on DEI. Here's a nomination for the, quote, bootlicking rich adjacent New York Mayor Eric Adams. He's been groveling to Trump for weeks, hoping to get the corruption case against him dropped, and he just might be successful. Indiana Governor Mike Braun is nominated. He laid out a right-wing economic vision in his recent State of the State address. He also ordered city officials to fully assist federal immigration raids in the state. And we've got here an extensive nomination for PP, Pierre Poilievre, the conservative leader in Canada, who apparently used his Holocaust Remembrance Day speech to justify the ongoing genocide in Gaza. He's also one of those, there are only two genders, guys. And he's a landlord. Damn, I guess the segment just wrote itself there. Very strong nomination. All of them strong nominations. Thank you, everyone. But there was one that was just a bit stronger than the rest that I just had to go with. And so, this week's Rich Dick is Congressman Rich McCormick. Thank you, Matt is positive for the nomination. I was also debating giving the dishonors to former Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who this week joined the crypto exchange Coinbase. We always knew she was using her public service to cash out eventually, just didn't know with who. Turns out it's crypto cranks. Somehow, even worse than I expected. But we'll give it to the congressman because he's on video being a rich dick. And, well, this is a TV show. Also, his name is Rich, so it just works. Before Trump's spending freeze was put on hold by a court and then rescinded, it put a lot of federal initiatives in doubt, including the National School Lunch Program, which provides free meals to poor students. Representative McCormick went on TV and basically said, "Fuck them kids, get a job." Here he was on CNN.
When you talk about school lunches, hey, I worked my way through high school. I don't know about you, but I worked since I was, before I was even 13 years old. I was picking berries in the field before we had child labor laws that precluded that. I was a paper boy. And when I was in high school, I worked my entire way through. You're telling me that kids who stay at home, instead of going to work at Burger King and McDonald's during the summer, should stay at home and get their free lunch instead of going to work? How many people got their start in fast food restaurants when they were kids versus just giving a blanket rule that gives all kids lunches in high school who are capable of going out and actually getting a job and doing something that makes them have value, thinking about their future instead of thinking about how they're going to sponge out the government when they don't need to. We're losing our way. And that's when we give people incentives to stay at home and not work. That doesn't work for America.
But a lot of these kids aren't even of like working age. They're young kids, and as you well know, and also some of the kids at Head Start, they're like 5 and under.
Okay, first off, school lunch should be free for everyone. If you're required to be there, you should be fed. Hell, even a lot of major employers now provide food for their workers who are required to be in the office. The kid has to be at school to learn. No one should be worried if they can't afford the food to make their brains work. McCormick is a doctor. He should know this. Second off, what do you mean you were picking berries in the field before child labor laws precluded that? My man, you were born in 1968. That's 30 years after the Fair Labor Standards Act. You weren't some scamp from industrial England. Now, obviously free and reduced school lunch programs are critical to families. Currently, only the most impoverished families in McCormick's home state of Georgia can even access the program. A family with 3 children has to earn less than $32,318 a year, which is extreme poverty wages for 3 kids, in order to qualify for the free lunch program. These are the people that McCormick is targeting. And it's not just to be cruel, although that is part of it. It's also because every dollar McCormick sees going to feed impoverished kids in school is one less dollar that he and his class allies can hold on to through tax cuts. That's all it is. While I was looking into this guy, I discovered that back in the 1990s, Rich McCormick was a contestant on American Gladiators. I was going to show you a clip of him getting absolutely destroyed on the show, but I don't want to get a copyright violation, so just check it out for yourself. Also, McCormick is twice divorced and is currently dating a colleague of his in the House, Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne. So he's laying the groundwork for divorce number 3. And I don't normally moralize over shit like this. People get divorced all the time. It's no big deal. But if McCormick is going to go out there and tell literal kids they need to work harder, I think he himself ought to work harder not getting divorced. Mind your business, Rich. You rich dick. All right, friends, the show ends this morning with a sunrise from our most prolific sunny sender, Charles. This one comes from somewhere in the Caribbean Sea. Enjoy. Thank you, Charles. Show's over. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Please sign up for Means TV if you haven't yet, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. Also follow us on social media. One day capitalism's gonna fall. I promise it will. But until then, we're gonna be right here. See you next week.